Hi, everybody. I'm Darlene Rondo, Vice President, Best Practices for Leonardo's online merchandising group, and I'll be your host for today's event, which is targeting the newish Bleisure traveler. A point to note, this type of traveler actually isn't new. In fact, it's not even a travel type. It's really a behavior. And this behavior has been around forever. I've been traveling this way for more than 30 years. The difference now is that technology, largely the internet and mobile, has made mixing business and pleasure much easier. Not sure that this is a blessing or a curse, but it is what it is. And the educational content you're going to hear about today may surprise some of you. I'm really excited to share these perspectives with you and invite you to weigh in as we move through our discussion. We're going to be tweeting today, so please feel free to join in the conversation at #LeoWebinar. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First, we're going to be recording the webinar, and at the conclusion of today's session, we'll be sending you a thank you for joining us email with a link to that recording, which you can share or listen to again at your leisure. Additionally, you have a questions dialog box in your GoToMeeting panel, and I see some of you have already found it. So throughout our discussion, please feel free to send in your questions, and we'll be addressing them as we move through the webinar, as well as at the end of the presentation, time permitting. So before we jump into the formal part of our presentation, I'd like to launch a poll. And this is helpful to us because for a couple of reasons. We'd like to get your input about the content that we're going to be speaking about, and it helps guide us as we move through the presentation. So the question I'd like everybody to answer is, how much do you understand about modern travel behavior? And there are three answers to choose from. The first is, I'm just learning. The second answer is, I get it, but I don't know really how to tell the right story. Or thirdly, I'm a pro and I just want to learn more. So the audience is weighing in, and it looks like we're about 50-50 between the first two answers. I'm just learning, and I get it, but I don't know how to tell the right story. So the majority of you have voted, and I'm going to close the poll. So it looks like 47% say don't know how to tell the right story, and 41% I'm just learning. So thank you, everyone, for weighing in. That's very helpful. Now I'd like to introduce our special guest. Robert Cole is the founder of RockCheetah, a hotel marketing strategy and technology company consulting practice that diligently attempts to prove that marketing, travel technology, quality service, and profitability can peacefully coexist. Robert's hospitality industry experience includes leading marketing planning for Four Seasons Hotels, heading Saber's hotel line of business, launching the Neat Group, the travel industry's first dynamic packaging platform, and leading product contracting for Mark Travel's 14 vacation brands. In his spare time, doesn't sound like there'd be much, Robert writes papers for Focusrite, authors his views from a corner suite blog, curates the travel quote of the day, and publishes a travel news fire hose on Twitter. So, Robert, pleased very much to have you with us today. I'd also like to welcome Lennert De Jong, who is the commercial director for citizenM Hotels. Lennert is experienced in the online hospitality distribution industry in a number of areas: business development, marketing, sales and strategy management. And as the commercial director for citizenM, he's responsible for their commercial strategy, which includes everything from its ranking on different travel websites and social media engagement, as well as the website's effectiveness and revenue management. Lennert is passionate about adventure and enjoys presenting digital marketing topics and traveling around the globe. Welcome to you as well, Lennert. Before I turn it over to Robert, who will kick off our discussion today, I'd like to give a brief overview of the Bleisure traveler. First of all, the term Bleisure is important because it acknowledges that they are actually one in the same person. A Bleisure traveler is someone who may be on business but takes time to visit the sites, go to a movie, or meet up with friends in their visiting city. And of course, vice versa. Leisures are going to check their email throughout their trip or hop on a web conference before they go to the beach for the day. And we can thank the evolution of mobile as well as the ubiquity of high-speed internet connections for the change in this behavior. Before remote connectivity was possible, or in fact easy, it was difficult, if not impossible, to multitask. With mobile, it's easier than ever for vacationers to stay in touch with their work while on the trip. In fact, 37% of employers expect their employees to check their email while on vacation. And 43% of international travelers have also admitted to taking their mobile professional devices with them on holidays or on weekend trips. This acknowledgement of Bleisure's behavior presents new opportunities for hotels to create visual storytelling that really expresses their ability to give travelers what they need while on the go. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Robert Cole, who is going to continue our discussion. Robert?
Good morning. Thank you, Darlene. It's great to be a part of this topic that's very close to my heart. The multi-persona traveler, in this case, the Bleisure traveler. So, and if you have the next slide, please.
Here we go.
There we go. Great. So, I thought I'd start off just a little overview of what I'm going to be speaking about. One would be multi-persona travelers, which most of us are, and then a little bit actually from J.D. Power on different traveler personalities, which is interesting. Of some things that they look at, which is slightly different from the persona aspect, and then some of the complexities involved with dealing with Bleisure travelers. The seven travel phases. A lot of groups have 5, but I've been pretty staunchly stating that there have been 7 for quite a number of years now. Then even more complexity, it goes across multiple devices, and then we'll finally get to the Bleisure experience and some potential solutions to deal with it. So to start off with the multi-persona traveler, I maintain that every traveler has multiple personas. If I take a business trip, my decision-making process, my activities, everything, pre-trip, during trip, are completely different than if I'm taking a family vacation or a romantic weekend with my spouse. Very, very different occurrences. And as Darlene mentioned, once you get into the Bleisure category, you can start doing a lot of different things. It's a family vacation, but there are business aspects to it, which complicates it even further. So a challenge with the persona is it's very often itinerary specific. It's dependent on who's traveling, so the composition of the travel party, and where they're going, the duration, all sorts of different factors are involved. And the challenge, particularly for hoteliers, is that so much effort has been put into frequent traveler numbers and frequent guest programs and that sort of thing. That's great, but a lot of those programs are only really good at identifying you as an individual, not necessarily understanding what the intent is of your trip and what you're trying to accomplish. So you wind up, getting certain kinds of email communications and text messages and all sorts of offers, which in some cases may be completely pertinent to what you're doing, and in other cases may be just completely irrelevant. So quickly, J.D. Power breaks down, now this is different from the persona, where a persona would be something where you're looking at a particular type of individual, and certainly a lot of groups do persona work with saying, oh, we are looking at Jack, and Jack is a male between 25 and 35 years old and has the following income characteristics and wants to accomplish these sorts of things when he travels. J.D. Power looks at it a little bit differently, and these are, well, I call personalities, and this is how these people deal with the travel information. So one of them, or the first one, is travel companions. And what that is that particular individual in this particular trip may not be making really much of the decision-making process in terms of booking and hotel selection, that sort of thing. They're just kind of tagging along for the ride. So it's interesting. So they may not be directly involved with the booking, but they may have a significant say in terms of what's going to be happening in terms of a Bleisure trip, where if it's just a pure travel companion for a single purpose trip, they may have very little to say. So again, it's a little bit of complexity. Constrained choice is a personality where the individual only has limited options, and particularly for Bleisure, this is very important because in many cases they may be booking a business aspect of their trip, which is highly constrained by their corporate travel program. So the corporate travel program may only book them into specific hotels that are approved, that sort of thing, and then those may or may not be well suited to their leisure activities. If they aren't well suited, then they may wind up needing to stay someplace else and breaking their trip in two, moving, that sort of thing. Or hopefully the hotel can communicate to the guest effectively that, hey, we are also a great location for leisure as well, and be able to tie the two together. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Habituals go and they do the same thing over and over. They know where they like to stay. They always go to Los Angeles. They're there on business a lot. Boom, that's what they do, just over and over. They like the consistency, the continuity of knowing exactly what's going to happen. Price buyers, clearly they're looking for price, and we'll talk a little bit about who's paying for these trips on a future slide. Scrutinizers, I think, are one of the most interesting ones. They're the ones who have they are doing absolutely everything to figure out what is going on with their trips. So they have planned every single aspect of it and have figured it out and work very, very hard at it. And then the last group of the 6 is services and amenities, and those are the folks who are just kind of looking at, do they have a great spa sort of thing, a very, very perhaps simplistic look at it, where there are certain things that are important, that's what they're doing, and very, very different from, say, a scrutinizer, a price buyer, a habitual, or people whose choices are being made for them. So those need to also be taken into consideration, because people, particularly in the Bleisure space, may or may not have flexibility to make selections the way they normally would with taking a different kind of trip.
And Robert, here's a question from Tommy in the audience. He's
Sure.
asking, and it's almost a statement that he wants your confirmation of. He says, and these people can cross, habitual can also be sensitive to price and can also be interested in service and amenities as well. So there's a crossover of these personalities as well. Is that a true statement?
Absolutely, and that's what makes it so tricky, because a habitual on business, when all of a sudden they're taking a leisure trip, the leisure aspect may be very focused towards the services and amenities sort of thing. Or they may be very constrained on the business side of their trip, and then again for the leisure portion, say it's family, the family's tagging along or coming in to meet them, all of a sudden they may be scrutinizers of really trying to figure out exactly and get the itinerary planned for some sort of incredibly event-filled weekend with the whole family.
Cool.
So the next one, the 7 phases of travel. Really for most kinds of travel, I break it down these 7 ways. Now, again, this doesn't require that everyone goes through these phases, but it starts off with inspiration. And actually, a honeymoon is I normally use as a great example, but you could use it for anything. We want to take a honeymoon. We're getting married. Let's do something terrific. Then you get into the research phase, where people have heard of the Seychelles. They think it would be a great place to take a honeymoon. They have no idea where the Seychelles are located. And once, particularly if they're located in the U.S., when they discover how far away they are, how much it may cost to get there, all of a sudden it starts limiting their realm of possibilities. So that really starts getting into the next phase of planning, is how do I get there? How much time do I have? If I do certain things different ways, I can get extra leisure time. That would be great. Then the next phase, which not many people include, but I think is very, very important, is the validation stage. And with that, that's really where TripAdvisor plays, and unfortunately is nearly alone in this role, and also where traditional travel agents play, where people are inspired, they've done some research, they've done planning on their own, but they're trying to make sure, did I make the right choice? Have I really figured this out? Particularly for those scrutinizers, trying to make sure that they've gotten things sequenced properly. Then, through all that effort, you finally get to a booking, and then get to the actual travel experience, and then can go share that, which can inspire others. But with this, the challenge is people have different needs at different times, and that's why it has to be considered. So for websites, that sort of thing, it's very, very important that you're looking at having the site structured where you can deal with these various stages, and certainly having great imagery and that sort of thing for inspiration is terrific. But you also want it to be efficient enough so you can get them down the funnel into the booking process without having to go through a lot of gyrations and unnecessary steps if that's what they need. As particularly for, say, someone who is a habitual, they know what they're doing. They need to get through and go. So for the Bleisure traveler, how the trip is booked is very, very important, because again, it may be in multiple steps. So to a hotel, it may be, if they're only on the leisure portion and the guest is staying in downtown Los Angeles for business meetings and then wants to go out to Santa Monica or head down to Anaheim because the family's coming in and they're going to do some leisure things, the hotels that are on the leisure end of that may be looking at it as being a completely separate trip. Whereas if it's a family vacation that needs a lot of business connectivity and that sort of thing, because there may be conference calls or other things that unfortunately interrupt that vacation, that's a different kind of a approach, which really falls into that planning stage. They're going to need to know that they've got good, solid internet access, that sort of thing, to be able to make these things happen. The third one, was the who was paying is also a very, very important aspect of it, because if the responsibility is split, that may call for a change in the hotel and that sort of thing. And of course, the booking coordination of it may be 2 bookings. So, okay, next one, Darlene, thank you.
What is that guy doing?
Actually, that's a very interesting slide. That was the original Google prototype for Google Glass. So thank goodness they streamlined it somewhat. Yeah. But yeah, that's what they started off with. So,
Robert, here's a question from your last slide from Ari, who wants to know, with services like Hotel Tonight, do you still say that the 7 phases is accurate for the decision process? That's an excellent question.
Yeah, that's true, and I think it's important to note that individuals may not go through all those steps, but in some cases, particularly in the case of Hotel Tonight, people may just decide, particularly if they're familiar with it, well, we're going to be doing all of these activities, that sort of thing, and we'll just book a hotel when we get there. And we'll use Hotel Tonight or something like that to do a last-minute booking. So they may have had intense planning to go to New York City and go see a show and go to a particular exhibit at a museum and that sort of thing, had all that sort of organization, but then that booking phase, they intentionally just left for after they arrive. And again, with Bleisure trips, sometimes you get into situations where people wind up, they're on business, the company's paying, and then they wind up staying with friends and relatives or college buddies, that sort of thing. So again, it's a very much a mix. But moving on with the multiple devices, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. I'm sure everyone's painfully aware, between desktop, tablets, which most groups that I work with now are not really considering as mobile devices, even though they are used and certainly can be mobile. The behavior is much closer to a desktop, so they're starting to move those back into kind of that realm. Smartphones, boy, that's a huge area for hotels. I just wrote updated some research that I'd done last year for Focusrite for a presentation last week at the Hotel Data Conference on what's happening with mobile apps with hotels, and quite sadly, all the hotel groups are basically getting shelled by the intermediaries, be it metasearch players or OTAs, by the numbers of downloads and the ratings. They seem to like the OTA and the metasearch apps much better than the hotel apps, and some of them low in terms of customer satisfaction, especially for ones that targeted frequent guests, which is a little disconcerting. But then we're also getting into wearables. There reportedly may be an Apple iWatch or something like that launched this fall. Certainly Google Glass has pluses and minuses to it. But there's also Connected Car, which is going to be a completely new mobile interface. I was at a different conference a couple of weeks ago, and what's happening there is the time that you spend in your car, that area in the console which may have a GPS and navigation, is now being looked at as a tremendous opportunity to provide value for people driving. So that's going to be yet another mobile device that people are going to have to consider that could be quite disruptive, particularly when you're driving around town in destination. So summary, the Bleisure experience has all these mixed influences. You have these personal goals of business and leisure. A lot of time, other people's goals wind up changing your goals, which may be your employer wanting you to work more than you'd like on your vacation, or your travel companions wanting to perform more leisure than what your employer may want you to be doing. And then, of course, the logistics of prioritizing the activities, sequencing itineraries, that sort of thing. The key is to provide relevance to the consumer. So on your website, whatever experiences you have, the emails, that sort of thing, are communicating these various facets of the hotel experience, of how you're located in proximity to great leisure, demand drivers, that sort of thing. The services that you provide that can really enhance, a leisure portion of a stay, and also the business services that are involved. And I would recommend even having some landing pages and that sort of thing on a website which talk about mixing business and leisure and that sort of thing, or various other groups that may apply to your specific hotel for specific things that the people may be coming in again to see, museums, or dine at particular restaurants, or go to sporting events. All those different things wind up helping those individuals get through the funnel, decide that you're the best hotel for them to have that experience at, and in many cases a very complex experience, and reassure them that they're making the right choice. So the potential solutions, and I'll be kind of high level on this and let Leonard go into a little more detail, but two aspects. Customization and personalization are a little bit different in my mind. Customization, you can do a lot of different things, and it's an explicit action. So it's all about signals now in terms of how websites work and email opens and that sort of thing. So if you send out an email that has something to do with leisure and it gets clicked on and winds up landing on a leisure landing page, you need to take that into consideration. So the imagery that winds up appearing on the page, that's the adaptive content portion, winds up providing some leisure-oriented pictures and things like that, because you have a hint that somebody was interested in leisure. If they hop across through business channels also, you may want to change the imagery. Again, a different Focusrite paper that I just finished off that will get published this month on personalization. I was speaking with one of the chief information officers for one of the major online travel agencies, and it was great. They were talking about what signals and that sort of thing do you have, that what really makes people convert. And he said they're experimenting with all sorts of different things, but the number one thing that was a given was that great hotel pictures, high quality, beautiful pictures, convert business. And that is very, very important to understand. So in terms of the adaptive content, it's really to make sure that those beautiful pictures are relevant to what they're doing, and going down through the way that they navigate through the site, that the imagery winds up kind of changing and reacting to what they've done, so they wind up seeing those great images. So it may be as simple as if someone goes and does a search for 2 adults and 2 children, boom, nice clue that you maybe should have some pictures of families and things like that enjoying your hotel. Cross-platform compatibility is critical, especially for individual hotels and things like that, and independents. I'm a strong proponent of having sites that can be set up where, again, the content can be adaptive and the site is responsive, where it will react to the form factor of the either desktop, tablet, or smartphone. So there may be one instance of the code, but again, the site will adapt to the format that the people are using. It takes a little bit more planning to do it that way. Certainly with complex trips, it's harder to plan. There may be more sessions involved, people coming back and forth and going across platforms. But again, if you can do that and track their behavior and have some cookies that you can track where they've been, what they've done when they come back, you can hopefully give them a similar experience. Very quickly, so I'm going to leave time for Leonard. The personalization aspect is where big data really comes in, and big data is very, very real. I know it's a buzz term that gets thrown around a lot very casually, but big data is the kind of information that there's either too much of, moving too fast, or quite honestly, it's too weird to fit into a traditional relational database. And what's happening is that, particularly the OTAs, a lot of the big hotel chains are now getting more into it, but they're capturing all the information about all the travelers going through their sites, and then comparing a particular individual's behavior of how they navigated across the site, what they searched for, that sort of thing, the time of day, the weather, all sorts of factors, to then figure out what is most likely the behavior that they are going to do, what do they want to see, what, when they click, produces the best response. So huge amounts of testing involved, not necessarily accessible or relevant to independent hotels, but that's, right now at least, that's certainly where the industry is heading, and there will be lots of big data tools coming out being available. So key takeaways, you need to really look at the traveler personas. What are those travelers trying to accomplish when they're staying at your hotel? Try to be considerate of people book travel in very many different ways. So if it is a scrutinizer, you want to make sure that there are pages with lots of detail that has everything that will satisfy them. Whereas if they're habitual and they just want to get straight through, they know all about your property, you need to make sure that you have a booking path that will work for them as well. You want to adapt to the phase of travel to make sure that you provide inspiration for people at that phase, or validation if there are reviews, that sort of thing that you can provide. That's terrific to, again, reassure them that they're making the right choice. You want that consistent experience across all the devices they may be using. And then particularly for the Bleisure traveler, you really want something that can provide them with the relevance of, yes, we have these great business services that can support you when you're on vacation. So if you're more of a leisure resorty destination, it's great to be able to say, hey, you can still plug in, and here's the stuff that we do to make sure that you're taken care of. Or if you're more a corporate location, here are some of the things that really make you great for being a leisure property as well. And again, most importantly, kind of marketing 101, differentiate yourself from your competition, play to your best, play to your strengths, and probably most importantly, to make sure it's a compelling presentation with some beautiful imagery, that sort of thing, to video, to really make sure that people understand your property and you sell the best aspects of it.
Well, great stuff, Robert. Thanks very much. And judging from all the audience's questions, they really got a lot out of it. It is all about the experience and how and what hotel marketers do with these insights that really matter, which is a great segue to our next speaker, Lennert De Jong. And Lennert, just before you start, Melody and Lisa and others in the group are asking sort of the same questions. And I know you're going to talk about this in your presentation, but they are interested in knowing from a hotel perspective, how do you really address the needs of these travelers, and what do you think are the most important hotel amenities for this type of traveler? And I know you have some very definite opinions on that. So Lisa, Melody, thank you for those questions. And with that, Lennert, off to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Darlene. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to some of you. I've understood that revolutions can start with a few people, and today we have over 600 people on the call. So my first suggestion starting off is actually that we start one. And it's based on the following. I think as an industry, we are better than business versus leisure. So when Darlene asked me to join for this webinar, I was excited that I could share the experience of a small hotelier. You know, we have a group of 7 hotels. We operate now on 2 continents. We have big plans. But, you know, the center is that we have formed a proposition for a certain traveler. And actually, we like to call them mobile citizens. But I would like us all to agree from now on, when our owners ask us how much percentage of business, how much percentage of leisure, that we're going to ignore the question. I want to start off with our declaration. This is when we started in 2006, actually, coming up with the concept, and it hasn't changed much. You know, it's a declaration that we have in every hotel, printed at our windows, in mirrors, in collateral, and things that we print, and things that people see. So, you know, people can identify themselves with this. They can either agree with it or not agree, but it also makes them feel part of it or not feel part of it. So for us, it's a great way to go out there and say, this is who we are, this is for who we are, and you know, if you're not part of it, no problem, we're not for everyone, but we're for you, that feels actually attracted to this. So it's travelers long and short haul, wary, wise and the blurry-eyed, to the suits, the weekenders, fashion baggers and affair havers, to the explorers, adventurers and dreamers, to all the locals of the world from Amsterdam, Boston, Cairo to Zagreb, to those who travel the world with wide eyes and big hearts, to those who are abundant yet united in a desire for positive traveling, to those who are smarter than a dolphin with a university degree and realize you can have luxury for not too much cash, to those who need a good bath, a cold drink and big fluffy towels, to all who are mobile citizens of the world, citizenM welcomes you all. So we went out in 2006 and it's now 2014, and if I look at some of the systems and some of the conversations I have around conferences or after I do presentations and conferences, there's still no tools available, especially not for independent hotels, to really get out of the boring market segments or the business versus leisure question. So if you see the difference, you know, I was just thinking about the average hotel. If they would do a declaration, they would say to all business people and leisure people, to all people who travel in a group, to those who belong in an airline crew, or to a small, medium, or big corporation, or are in a meeting, incentive, or conference, the average hotel welcomes you all. This is with the data that you get from your technology suppliers, most of you, and this is what you get. This is not a very poor question to ask. If you look at who is our target audience, who do we target at citizenM, this is something we actually took over from our heritage in fashion, whereby we noticed that people are not anymore in one bucket. They cannot be categorized. And so I'm not saying that all citizenM people, citizenM guests are wearing Armani jeans, but this is about the contrast. So I assume that people who stay at citizenM have a job. So at some point during the week, they're probably having their business hat on. At some point of the week, they probably have their leisure hat on. So let's take that as a fact. So we target people who wear Armani jeans with a Gap t-shirt. They drink champagne, but take the bus home. They fly EasyJet, or for you in the States, JetBlue, but spend a few hundreds on a good dinner. It cares more about experience than points. These are all characteristics, and they're not to be caught in one or two buckets.
And I think, Lennert, that ties back to the question that Melody and Lisa and others are asking is, I think what you're saying for citizenM, you don't look at it as are they business or leisure. You look at the behaviors of your guests and focus on that and take that approach, as opposed to, are they arriving on Thursday and leaving on Sunday, which makes them a leisure traveler, versus, arriving on Tuesday and leaving on Wednesday.
Yeah, I have a philosophy in my team, and this is a work ethos that is also changing, and you see this everywhere. You see this yourself, and Robert just shared some details. But if I allow my people, or I ask them to check their emails on a Sunday, if they want to go to the movies on a Monday afternoon, why not? Yeah, and this is changing, and actually what we try to do with citizenM, and I heard the question, but I don't want to run a sales pitch for citizenM especially because most of you are, hoteliers, and you don't need to be sold citizenM, but yeah, you need to take friction away for those people. So, we have big lobbies. So New York, as an example, most hotels have a lobby that's, very small because it's wasting space, right? Well, these type of travelers, they don't want to sit in a hotel room the whole night by themselves when they're traveling for business, and actually they're in their leisure time, and all they can do is either go on the street by themselves, or go have dinner by themselves, or sit in their hotel room and order room service. So we decided not to do room service. We decided to do a 30 feet high lobby, if I'm not mistaken, or 12 meters, and give them space to work, to enjoy free Wi-Fi, effortless, without any friction, to give them control over a process such as check-in, free movies on demand. So if you want to watch a movie in the room, watch a movie. It's on us. To take all that friction away, and to give people a place where during the day you're welcome to work. Open your computer, have meetings. At night have a drink. Even if you're not a guest, this is a place where you can that you can call home. But on to the next slide. Again, is business versus leisure not a very poor question to ask? So this is a bit of an overview. What is between a guest, and this is truth, but to some extent hypothetical, because there's more to it than just the items I put out there. Between the guest and a hotel. And hotels really focus on channels, and they try to put on a channel a stamp, right? So the GDS connectivity we consider business. Direct, phone, walk-ins, call center, we don't really know. It's business and leisure. Brand.com could be either business if it comes through corporate rate, and it's leisure if it comes in on a Thursday. And then third-party websites we're having difficulties with since day one, because we all consider them leisure. What you really should be focusing on is what guests do before they become a channel. A channel is something that lives in your PMS. The activities are, and I'm just going to give some examples later on the presentation, activities actually help you to put something in front of the guests and to actually learn from them. And Robert touched upon a couple of those subjects already: customization, personalization, and one-to-one marketing. And I think we will be a couple of steps away in the industry. I hope 1 or 2 years, whereby there's some companies that are coming out with things that individual hotels actually can do, to influence this. So business or leisure is everyone, right? So either someone is business or leisure. So we conclude it's 100% of our business. Now, define an audience, like we did at citizenM, mobile citizens. You just saw the declaration, it's for those. And serve them a proposition based on if somebody's price sensitive or insensitive. If there's a company affiliation, if a person is with a company, you can conclude a couple of those things that were also in Robert's presentation. Aspirational brand affiliation. Some people are looking for your brand, and who do you inspire to? Maybe you can conclude if somebody says on Facebook, I like Apple versus I like Walmart, that it says something about the person. So look at what brands people say they aspire to. Repeat versus new. Do you know the person, or is it the first-time guest? Online reputation score, and I don't mean any of the review pros or the brand karmas. I mean the reputation score of the guest. Who is this guest? Does he have 1,000 followers on Twitter? Does he have 10,000 followers or 1 million? Or is he not on Twitter? Tell something about the type of guest you have in front of you. Behavior and purpose. Those two are really interesting. Behavior. What is the guest doing? You can see that actually, and you can see that, and a lot of us have access to Google Analytics, but we're not really knowing how to do anything with it the moment that it really needs to happen before it becomes analytics. And purpose, why? The why does the guest, what is the guest doing at that moment at the website, and why is he there? And those are intriguing questions to ask, and actually to look for answers. And for certain, at citizenM, we've been trying to do a couple of these things. So I have a couple of examples on the next slide.
Leonard, but yeah, before we go on, Melody has a question. It's a great question. So, So what do you think about the saying, as a hotel, you can't be everything to every guest? That isn't really what you're saying, right?
No, absolutely. You're not everything to every guest. That is Booking.com. Yeah, they have everything for every guest, or Expedia or any OTA. So yeah, you have to manage your guest reviews as well, right? So the moment that you start targeting the wrong people, you will see that back in your reviews. So your own brand image, of course, and this is very important. So this presentation is purely about. So now you have a product, you have a brand. What are you going to do with it? And yeah, for sure, we are not everything for everyone, because some people are not willing to pay the price. Some people don't like the images. Some people don't like, the way that our brand talks. Some people don't like our location. Some people, cannot afford to travel to it. So yeah, it's always for a specific person. But it's a pretty large audience, because if you consider the world population, the online world population is in potential your audience, and you're just going to find the right people.
Yeah, exactly. Here's your next slide.
All right, so I put two screenshots here. One is of our booking engine, and that is and I can pull up any booking engine, but I was just pulling up ours. Sensitivity versus insensitivity. So somebody that goes for the lowest rate, with a €6 difference, and lock themselves in, can we then consider them price sensitive? I mean, why would you otherwise go for that? Versus insensitive, they pay a higher price in terms of cancellation. And then we have a specific rate out there for repeat users, and of course you can also see that from your site. And then aspirational, and this is a link that we have on our own website that actually links back to an OTA, and it shows hotels at the same date, and we do a check and we show to customers what our competition is doing, but we are in charge of competition, and not Booking.com or Expedia or Orbitz or whatsoever. And so we choose the hotels that we show here, and so it's like people that buy this also buy this. And then on the right we have, I put a print screen, and this was something that Robert raised earlier. Behavioral. These little dots, and they're all going through a sales funnel. The higher you are, the less we know about you, the colder the prospect. The lower you are, the hotter you are. And if you cross a certain line, that's a line that goes through let's say the 10% of the page, then you become a prospect. And what actually happens, if you go all the way down, you convert it. So this, in this specific case, I took the screenshot with 231 converters since the morning. And the bigger the balls, it means the better the chances are that you're going to convert. Now, what is behind this is an algorithm tool that reads all of the visitors, and it starts to understand what it needs to do. Now, we're doing a couple of small things with it, but we're expanding. So we first started to do pop-ins on the website. So the moment that you qualify for a pop-in, so we see you're hesitating between two hotels in Amsterdam, we serve you a pop-in to try to get you to the hotel where we need the business most. But then the algorithm started to see that it also can do pictures. So a female Chinese traveler going to New York is going to be influenced by different content than a male US traveler going for a weekend to New York. You need to serve them a different piece of content. And this is what that tool is doing. And it's not such an expensive tool, and I hope that over time, it's not really geared for the hospitality industry yet, but there will be suppliers that can just give this for a couple of $100 a month to hotels to just run it on their website and have it automated, have a liquid website for hotels. And then the last slide, another example is that a magazine. When we started with our magazine a couple of years ago, we thought this is great because it sets us apart, and we can talk about cities where we don't have hotels yet, and people like to read this stuff. But actually, what we found is that besides content and relevance for the people who are looking at citizenM, and of course the obvious search engine optimization and branding, the main benefit from having this magazine, and we have 30 contributors to this magazine who do this free of charge, and they put articles in different cities. For us, it's profiling, right? So people are reading, people are going to Amsterdam or Glasgow or London, New York, Paris, and they read about things. We can see that some things inspire them, art inspires them. In the background, in our database, we put a check mark every time does something, not because Big Brother is watching them. This is purely to identify the person's interest, to capture the behavior, and to be able to serve a better one-to-one experience. So those are a couple of takeaways that I had from a very practical use case, and I hope we're going to see more of this in the hotel industry going forward, because I think it's exciting to leave the poor channel and market segmentation that we have in our industry behind us, and that we start getting better in the game that has been taken over slowly by the online travel agencies.
And that brings up a couple of questions. First from Petra Lennert, and I thought this question would be asked. I'll go back to the slide. The behavioral tool, the conversion tool that is on the right of your screen. What did you say the name of that was?
I didn't mention the name, but it's Ignition.
Ignition. Okay. Great.
Ignition 1.
Petra. I'm sorry?
Ignition 1.
Ignition 1. Great. Thank you. And then the other question, and it comes from Veronique, because you mentioned the OTAs, and I thought it's extremely clever. I'm just going to go back to this slide here. When you've taken the bull by the horns and put control in back to you, which is your linking to an OTA, and you're choosing what hotels you want to be compared against. And Veronique was asking along the lines of OTAs, what are your thoughts on how they'll play moving forward?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, because citizenM is owner and operator, and actually we're going a bit into the management contract route, and then you have discussions with owners, and the OTAs have an interesting position because somehow they manage to get a large percentage of revenue from hotels that in the typical management contract, the big brands are not getting. They're not in a position to claim that amount of money. So it means that owners are giving more money to OTAs to capture guests than they're giving to the brands, and the brands are therefore focusing on their loyalty programs, and they're trying to do everything they can to get more customers and to get new customers, to get people to repeat more. But going back to that OTA question, I think they will become more powerful, and I think they will get closer to hotels. If I'm looking at the hotel industry from a very high helicopter overview, I don't think there's any reason that a 40-room hotel should understand any of this. If I would write a book, would I then hire an e-commerce manager and a director of sales and a director of marketing and a reservation person to handle the books? No, I would put it on Amazon. And so my bet is that there will be a big fight between the loyalty programs, the corporate travel programs, and some OTAs, and that you will see a consolidation of the chain, and that's going to help in the end the independent hotel, because the independent hotel will be given a marketing platform where it can actually reach out to guests again. And the only thing that will happen is that OTAs need to become reasonable in their in their percentage, because there's no way that the hotel P&L can sustain such a thing to the degree that they're bringing in the business.
Robert, I'm sure you have many thoughts on the subject. Would you like to weigh in?
I believe certainly the OTAs serve a very valuable function in the industry, and the reality, even for some of the largest hotel groups, is that they don't possess the capability, even with their frequency programs, with their marketing budgets, everything, to reach a lot of the travelers that the OTAs book, and that's obviously why the OTAs have been able to command high margins, because quite honestly, the hotels haven't been able to get access to those guests using their own means for a more cost-effective in a more cost-effective way. I certainly think, and Leonard's right, I believe for independent hotels, that sort of thing, there are ways to certainly make your way up through everything from search engine optimization and all the different tools that are available. particularly if it's more of a long tail type approach where someone is looking for the best luxury boutique hotel in New York or on the Upper East Side or something like that. The more specific it gets, certainly the more opportunity for a particular hotel to grasp that. Whereas if you're just looking for New York hotel generically, the OTAs will probably win out on that. So the OTAs, tend to be very successful with individuals who are brand agnostic, right? They don't really care about the brand. And the job of all the hoteliers is to make sure that their property stands out, that it's differentiated, and that their brand means something. I think Lennert with citizenM is a classic example of a group who's doing that very well.
Great. Thanks, Robert. So the key takeaways, and thank you, Lennert. It's really always important to hear the practical side of the topic from a hotel marketer, and particularly Lennert with citizenM, because you guys are so tuned in to your audience. So, I think what we take away is get to know your audience by their behavior and aspirations, their loyalty, and really not type of trip, and then focus your marketing efforts from the guest perspective, not your traditional channel views, and serving them with interesting and relevant communication, whether that's your visually driven website or your targeted online magazine. People today will not, they won't consider you if you're not interesting and relevant to them and helpful, and we're seeing more and more of that. So I'm going to ask everybody to participate, if you would, in a last poll, which helps us understand how much you like today's content. So the question is, based on today's content, will you attend future webinars on different topics? And stay tuned, because I do have a special announcement for next month's webinar. So everybody's weighing in. Thank you very much. By and large, 93% of you say yes, you were very happy with today's content. So thank you for weighing in. We really appreciate that. And I'm going to close that poll. And I would like to invite everyone to join us next month, late September the 25th, and we're going to be conducting a webinar, Understanding Today's Travel Shopper, and this will be presented by Google, and it will be their learnings from the latest Google Traveler study. So we are going to be sending you a thank you for joining us email with a link to this recording of today's webinar, as well as a Save Your Spot link to next month's webinar. So just wanted to share that with everyone. And just in conclusion, before we leave you, a brief word about Leonardo's visual storytelling platform we call vBrochure. We heard today that the presentation to the consumer is really, really important. And the solution that we provide to hotel marketers to help you achieve some of the business objectives that we talked about today includes reaching and engaging the consumers while they're shopping. It is a way to communicate the value you provide so that you just don't sell on price. And it's really an opportunity to set yourself apart from the competition so that the shopper, as they're going through that journey that we heard Robert talk about, chooses your property with the certainty that it really is the right choice for them. And then you take that story, package it up, and syndicate it out to Leonardo's V Network, which is the most extensive visual media syndication network in the global travel industry. So we connect hotels with millions of travel shoppers across all the sites that they're using, the third-party travel channels, the GDSs, the online travel agencies, the research sites, review sites, etc. And so you can really leverage the power of these websites and amplify your story across the channels with the vBrochure network. So again, thank you very much to Lennert De Jong from citizenM, Robert Cole from RockCheetah. As always, both you guys were truly informative, and I know the audience truly appreciated hearing from you. We have a lot of positive comments coming in. So thank you to everyone. You can contact Leonardo at the in the various ways that are listed on the screen. And again, we'll see you hopefully next month for the Google Traveler Study. Today is Thursday, which effectively is the new Friday, and since Leonard's in Amsterdam, he's got a head start on us. So everybody have a good rest of your week, and enjoy your weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.